For our final presentation that I'm also very excited about, we have SUSHI monitoring, creating an at-a-glance interactive dashboard in Alma Analytics, presented by Carin Yavorcik from Oregon Health and Science University. Carin Yavorcik is the strategic assessment librarian for the OHSU library, where she leads the collection, analysis, and dissemination of information and data to facilitate planning and decision-making related to the library's resources and services. So whenever you are ready, Carin, please feel free.
There we go. I was on mute. Sorry about that. Can everyone hear me?
Sound good.
Okay, great. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking around for my presentation. It's been a really informative day. I've really enjoyed this conference so far, and I've learned a lot. And I hope you'll learn something from my presentation. So I'm going to be presenting on SUSHI monitoring, creating an at-a-glance interactive dashboard in Alma Analytics. And so I'll primarily be kind of demoing this tool that I created, which was to solve a problem that has been discussed already today somewhat. But that problem is actually kind of, I have to take one step back to start out. So the first problem is really how hard it is to harvest usage data. It's spread across multiple vendor interfaces. It's difficult, time-consuming to answer questions or create comprehensive reports, as many previous presenters have touched on. And so the solution that we used is to configure Alma to, gather all of our vendor usage reports using the Standardized Usage Statistics Harvesting Initiative, aka SUSHI. And yes, I did have to Google that. And yes, I did have to Google that multiple times to find anything other than restaurant recommendations. So this has actually been working really well for us. We're able to get the data that we need much more quickly and easily, although I will definitely admit that it was a time-consuming process to set up. But now that we've got it, it's been working pretty well. However, it does create a new problem, which is that there are enough errors and glitches that the harvest needs to be monitored pretty regularly. So how can we make sure that the data we're looking at is complete? So there are a number of tools that that can be accessed, without creating anything. And so that was sort of the first thing that I explored when I was monitoring this. The first one is that you get a job report in Alma when when the harvest happens. For us, we have that harvest go once a month. And so once a month we get this report, and we can take a look and review it, but it's pretty text heavy. It doesn't offer like a ton of context, and it was still pretty time consuming to use. So it wasn't as efficient for me to go through and figure out like what's a problem that needs to be addressed. And then of course you'd have to do it every single month, go through all of we have dozens of different vendors that we're looking at. Okay. So this was not the best solution. So the next thing I looked at was in Alma Analytics, one of the out-of-the-box reports from Alma. I've included the path here, is this monthly usage data analytics report. And so this works a little bit better. It's much more visually oriented. What we're looking at here is, we see the platform and then all of the different measures from all of the different counter reports, and then whether there's a file that's been loaded into the system. And then it's highlighted in red if it hasn't. And so this, while it was an improvement over looking at the original report that I previously showed, it still wasn't quite as efficient for everything that I wanted to do. This is a screenshot of my entire computer screen, and I'm still only looking at one platform, so there's lots of scrolling that I have to do. And I also kind of wanted to see some additional contextual information. So I ended up copying this and creating my own dashboard to help me monitor the harvest. So I'm going to go into that demo. I did want to note that if you are at an Alma institution and you want to follow along, you can go to in Alma Analytics, you can go to shared folders, community, reports, institutions, and then find OHSU in the very long list. And then I created a folder specifically for this presentation today. And of course, because Alma hates me, oops, that's not where I want to go. Because Alma hates me, they previously deleted sections of this report. This folder reappeared randomly today, but the one that you want is the SUSHI monitoring dashboard. And so I'm going to open that up now. All right, so this is the report that I adapted the original into, and it's got a pretty similar format, but you'll notice first of all that we only have one material type indicator for each type of counter report. And this allows me to kind of see everything more quickly. I didn't necessarily need to see every single measure for every single report and whether or not that there was a file for it. If one measure came in and it had data, then I, for the most part, assume that the other measures are going to come in and have some data with them. That may not 100% of the time be the case, but I think most of the time it will be. The other thing that's happening here is that I'm actually getting the full count of the measure in here. And so that allows me to get some context around what's coming in. So like the previous report, I'm highlighting anything that's null or anything that's a 0 value in red. And so I can see, with this particular vendor, nothing harvested for the last 2 months. That's something that I might want to go in and check out. However, when I see some of this red here, these book reports that are harvesting, they typically don't have a lot of data that's coming in. So, the fact that they're coming in null, probably there really is no usage data. And so that's not something that I need to worry about. And so it gives me that context. Or with the J2 that I'm seeing, oh, we don't usually have any denials, but we had some, maybe I want to go and, check in with some of my colleagues to see, were people reporting problems more recently, that sort of thing. So that can be a super useful context to have. So the other really fun thing that I did with this report that is really helpful is all of these are links to go and look at the counter data in more detail. So if I want to get some more context, I can actually click on this, and usually takes a couple seconds, but it should navigate me toward a J1 report where if I want to go and delve in a little bit more detail and see, oh, what was going on? Why was there no data for March? I have this report that's giving me some info. I can expand and I can see that, oops. I can see that it looks like they actually switched platforms between February and April. And so that's probably because of the platform switch, maybe why I couldn't get data for that month. And so the way that link is set up, that's set up as an action link, and it automatically filters to the material type indicator and the vendor name of that line in the report. I can hit the back button to go back where I was before. One other thing is there's a lot of different ways you could sort this when you're thinking about either the platform or the vendor or whatnot. And the way that was most useful for me was to use the vendor setup in Alma as opposed to the platform, mainly because that's where I would go to solve the problem if there was an issue. So it makes it easy to kind of go in, and that's where I'd have to adjust SUSHI credentials or whatnot if something changed or anything like that. The other thing that is super useful about setting it up in kind of that way is if there are a handful of vendors where I don't have SUSHI set up, but they do provide counter compliant reports. And so I can upload those manually and I can check to see that I have a full set of data even for those in Alma when I'm pulling the reports together. This report also has different filters set up, which can be very useful. So like if you're preparing your ACRL report and you want to look at the previous fiscal year, instead it's set up to show the previous complete 12 months by default, you can change it to previous fiscal year and it will jump. And it will, now it's showing July through June. And if you wanted to only see, whatever reports you are going to use for ACRL, whether it be the J1 or the J3, say I want to look for those specifically, I can filter. So it's only showing those and I can check to see, do I have complete data for all of those? And it looks like I'm in pretty good shape. So that's great. If you wanted to, you could even filter by vendor. I will admit that I rarely ever do this. I just haven't really had a need to. So those filters are useful in terms of sort of slicing and dicing. I'll note that if we go back to the catalog, please, to the extent you want to, feel free to copy this folder and paste it into your own institutions and play around with it. I just ask that you not edit what's going on in here. So I wanted to go in and show a little bit about how some of those things are set up. The two kind of main features that make it super useful to me are the conditional formatting and the action link to jump to the counter report. So I'm going to go in and edit that. So the SUSHI monitoring dashboard is sort of the main place I go to look at it. But the monthly usage data analysis is sort of the basis of that dashboard. So I'm going to go in and edit this. And I'm going to jump to the criteria section. So both of these are set up within the column properties criteria of Alma Analytics. So if I go to column properties and I go to conditional formatting, it's very much like setting up a filter where it will highlight anything that here I've noted that it's anything null or anything that's of a 0 value in bright red. And you could go in and add a condition to anything here that would change this column, just like you would for any other filter. And then you would have the option to change what the style looks like. And I just made it very simple and added a background color here. The other interaction one that I set up was on the material type indicator. And again, that's also in column properties under the interaction. And so in this case, by default, it usually shows this default drill. I changed it to action links. And when you have action links set up, you can tell it to navigate to another report within analytics. So in this case, I've added one here. I'll just go through the process of how I added it. It's thinking really, really hard. And then so you can choose the action that you want to take. And if you go to navigate to BI content, you can select the place that you want to go to. So you have to click through 20 million folders to get to the place that you want to go. Scroll way, way down, find OHSU, find the folder for today. I'm actually going to expand this combine usage resources section, and then the usage dashboard is where I'm telling it to go to page 1. And so that was how I set that up. Right. And the other thing that I'll mention with the action links is that for them to work properly, they do kind of have to have some of the same information between the two reports, like if you're going from one report to another report. So that's just something to be aware of if you're ever working with action links. I'm not going to save my changes. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my slides here. All right, so that went a lot faster than I expected because I'm a little nervous. But if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them either today or you can email me at any time. And I was also really pleased to discover that Microsoft has a sushi icon, which is pretty cool. So.
That is very cool. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to add my voice to the chorus that was in the comments saying, wow, that is so cool. And I'm very grateful that you shared that because I know that I and it appears other people have been looking for some type of way to monitor this stuff that is better than what what was currently existing. So again, that was a really, really cool dashboard, and just the dashboard and the presentation were both great. So thank you a lot for that. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A right now. I mean, it was very thorough, so that makes sense. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in there. We can give it a couple seconds, couple minutes, and see if anyone has anything to ask. Just seeing a lot of people in the chat really appreciating this, so fantastic. Just to all attendees, again, everything today has been recorded, and the recordings and the slides and any Q&As and resources that were shared in the comments, all of that is going to be shared with attendees. You'll be emailed at whatever email you use to register for this conference. So just keep your eyes on your email. It'll be within the next month for sure, but hopefully about 2 weeks or so. I'm seeing something in the Q&A now. We have a question. Is Oracle Analytics related to the Power BI that we saw in other presentations?
No, Power BI, I have not used Power BI extensively. We don't have a subscription to that, but it's a Microsoft product. You could theoretically export from the Oracle or your Alma Analytics into Power BI if you had that to create other data visualizations, but you could also do that with something like Tableau or another visualization project.
All right, thank you. We have another question. There was some discussion earlier about discrepancies between Alma served sushi, so to speak, and sushi direct from vendors, if I understood correctly. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I would say it's definitely something to keep an eye on. We do occasionally have cause to go and download a specific report the um, from the vendor, especially or sometimes a vendor will send us something, just we won't ask for it and they'll send it. And generally I have found them to be mostly the same. The one that I will note that I don't like to use all my analytics for is the kind of base TR report from Counter, the formerly known as TR Master. I haven't been successful in getting all of the attributes to come in via SUSHI, and that is challenging. So if I wanted to pull, controlled versus OA access, the TR report, I haven't been able to get that data for all of the vendors that are coming in via SUSHI. So so in that case, I do rely a lot on the different report views, like the JR1 or the 2 or whatever. So that's the thought that I have on that, to that extent.
All right, thank you. That's good to know about those formerly known as master reports. We have another question. Silly question for these reports to be populated. Do you need to turn on sushi in your Alma first? Not a silly question, helpful question.
Yes, you do. So if you tried to go in and you didn't see anything in there, that probably means that you don't have sushi set up. And so a big project for me when I first started, and this, I will say this project, like to get it complete, probably took a good 6 months to get set up in Alma, but like go in big, and one of the other presentations definitely touched on this, how much it took to figure out even everything that you need to gather, right? And get them all set up in Alma. So figure out, do they have sushi? What are the credentials you need? They're all sort of slightly different, so it's a big project just to get it in Alma, but for me at least, it felt really worth it once it was in there, because now it's so much easier to answer questions or pull reports. So yes, and I just saw in the chat, don't forget to turn on the job in acquisitions. Yes, or in some cases, don't. The default for us when we first set it up was it was harvesting every week, and so it was just getting a lot of empty reports because sometimes it wasn't ready or whatever. And so figuring out how to switch it to once a month instead of once a week also created a lot fewer errors and reports to look at. I will say at that point I hadn't built this dashboard yet, and I was looking at those job reports every week and wondering like, how can I make this go less frequently? Finally figured that out. So yeah, it was definitely a trial and error process. So
Yes, that sounds familiar. I think a lot of us can relate to that, setting up sushi being something of a bear, but it's kind of cool when it's all set up, when it's all just done, and then you can magically see what's going on. Um, let's see. I think there's a couple more in the Q&A. What do you do with non-sushi data that are not harvested into Alma for the monthly report?
well, it depends on if it's counter compliant or not. We have a handful of vendors who are not don't offer sushi but do have counter reports. And in the Alma usage data vendor section, you can actually manually upload a counter report. And so it can, and once it's in there, it's read just like a sushi harvested report. So, and that is the vast majority of our vendors. We do have a few that don't do counter, including one of our major book vendors doesn't, they say they have counter reports, but they're not compliant. They can't be uploaded and read by Alma. Usually I just sort of keep a file of those kind of, and I kind of pull those as needed, and try to add them in for as close as I can when I'm sort of pulling a more comprehensive report.
All right, thank you. Our next question, how long did it take you to set up all your sushi profiles in Alma?
Like, cause I don't know exactly, but I think it was roughly about 6 months. Yeah. I mean, not just working on that, but like, with that and the other things I was working on, it's sort of a larger process. I was also new to the institution and was really learning the collections. And so it was a larger process of not just setting up sushi, but really getting familiar with all of our different vendors and all of our different packages. And we subscribe to a lot of things individually versus as packages. And so like you might have noticed on our list, we had a lot of like individual, like small institutions and things, or small associations and things like that publish one or two journals, and but we subscribe to those and we spend money on them, and we want to know if it's an efficient use. So I will say that we use Veracity as a subscription agent, and having and previous to setting this up, we did use their usage harvesting statistics, and that was a useful service for us. This works better once I was able to come on with some expertise in this area, but if you don't have the expertise, that is a very useful service if you use Veracity. And even just coming in and having a place where I could go to like figure out all of our different vendors and things like that was really helpful.
Thank you. Next question. Do I need to copy more than just your dashboard from your SUNYLA folder?
Yes, you should copy the entire folder if you want it to work correctly. And I think I can go in and share again. You may or may not, depending on where you copy it to, may need to sort of relink the things. Sometimes dashboards copy weird. So I can share my screen again really quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
And somebody just shared in chat, you can use the archive function to copy.
Yeah, okay, that's great. If you were to go in and edit the dashboard, like if this is in yours or whatever, you might need to like go in to the folder that you copied. So like if you copied it, into your institution folder, and this is you might need to go in and find like wherever you saved it and actually like move the report itself over to replace it here, if that makes any sense. So like if you had your monthly usage report from your folder that you copied, moving it in here. I'm not sure if you have to do that or not, but that's one troubleshooting thing that I might try if it wasn't working. I know that dashboards can sometimes be challenging to copy. And if anybody else has more expertise in copying dashboards than I do, please feel free to jump in.
Thank you. Yeah, I see in the chat, archive and then unarchive should preserve all the linkages. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, it looks like we have one more question. How do you work with SUSHI reports that came in error?
Do you mean the reports that came in error, like they came in and they were null, or they didn't have a value? If I notice, especially if it's like every single month or every single report for the month came in or it did not come in or had no values for the month, usually I will double check to see if like I missed a notification that the vendor was making changes or something like that. And I would go in, and usually that's the reason, not always, but or like the vendor said they had an issue with their reports or something like that. Like there was one with Oxford recently where their reports weren't working for like 1 or 2 months, I think. Or like the one that I showed you with, I think it was the neurological surgeons, they changed their platform. And so I need to update the credentials. So I would go into wherever the SUSHI credentials are set up and edit those. In some cases, like it might just be like a blip, and if I reharvest it with a custom harvest, it'll run and it'll be fine. So I had that with JSTOR for a little while where it was just being annoying. So.
Thank you. It looks like we have one final question. What resources would you recommend for starting this type of work, including SUSHI setup?
Yeah, so I would start out with actually the previous presentation about usage reports actually had a lot of really great information about getting started in terms of just like really getting familiar with, where do you go to get usage stats currently? Where do you get, what vendors do you have? Is just sort of make a list, which it sort of starts out as your to-do list. Like we had a list of admin logins. And so I basically kind of went through that to like figure out, where do we need to get to get it set up. And so usually somewhere on the vendor admin interface will give you information about how to get the SUSHI set up. Usually there may be an API key, or you may just have to put in your credentials on the Alma side. And that is under like in some cases, you'll have to go in and set up the vendor. They might not be set up in your Alma institution. I'm just looking here under our vendors, there's a tab in the vendors section of Alma for usage stats. And so, that doesn't necessarily, like you can put in whatever SUSHI credentials you want there. But I wanted them to each be tied to, you know, the place where we would go to get the vendor information. So there's some really good documentation in Alma, and I'd highly recommend reading that if you haven't. That's another good place to start.
All right, thank you. And I think that's it. So thank you one more time for your presentation and for sharing that really cool dashboard with us all.